You could feel free to have tea and water at any time during this meeting. And so, yeah, so now I just want to mention as well that this meeting is being recorded. So, and also I would like for you to silence your cell phones, if you may. And if you have to have a conversation, please take it outside of the meeting. Thank you. So now that we've got a couple of ground rules down, we are going to have some ground rules, some agreements during this meeting. This meeting here tonight is for us to come together as a community and come up with some solutions. All right? Can you all agree? Yeah. I see some head shaking. For those of you that don't know me, know that I will physically, no. All right, so if someone in the audience, just popcorn style, would read these agreements up here, one at a time, please. All right, number 2. Number 3.
We listen to what each person has to say. We do not interrupt each other, and we do not speak too often or too long.
That was for you. And number 4, please. So in this meeting, if everyone agrees with these agreements, I would just like for you all to do this. Okay? This is a community meeting, and we will be talking, not yelling, not shouting. All right? And so with that said, we have a meeting. There was something else that I wanted to say about these. We are going to hold all of our questions to the end of the conversation. You will have a chance to ask questions, but please write those questions down so that you can answer them at the appropriate time. All right? So now I'm going to have Emily Alma.
Thank you, Keisha. I want to mention a couple of other things before I get started. One is that we are being televised. I want you to know that. So BCAC TV is televising us live. So that's exciting for us that this will have a lot of folks able to watch. And also, if you don't want to be televised, you can hide in a corner, okay? But we're really pleased that they're willing to do this. There's several of our elected folks here, and I'm not going to mention names because I'm afraid I might miss somebody, but I do want to welcome Chief Mike O'Brien to be here, and we want this to be a conversation where we are seeking solutions, not attacking people. And I also understand that DA Ramsey will be here, and he was held up in court, so he's going to be slipping in a little bit late. But welcome, everyone. I'm really glad you're here, and we've been working toward this for quite a few months, and we're excited to have this be our first maiden voyage to open up to the Concerned Citizens for Justice, to open up to the public. Our tagline is building a culture of trust and respect for the work we are doing at Concerned Citizens for Justice, because we feel this is the essence of what we are about. Am I too close to the mic? Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm not a professional. Our ultimate goal is to establish citizen oversight of local law enforcement, and we see that as being connected with building a culture of trust and respect in our community. That's the way we see a process that will achieve that end. After we have met for over a year, and tonight we'll be sharing with you the results of some of that work. We have already presented to the Human Relations Network and to the Chico City Council, and we met, several of us sat down with Chico Police Chief Mike O'Brien, and we are pleased that Chief O'Brien was receptive to our thoughts. So we are looking forward to this being a positive evolution of what's happening in our community. Chief O'Brien shared with us that our intention is in accord with the mission and value statement of the Chico Police Department. That mission, or that vision, being to build a culture of trust and respect. Their mission is to create a safer Chico and improve quality of life by partnering with our community and providing dedicated service. Their values: integrity, courage, respect. So, in principle, the vision of Concerned Citizens for Justice and the mission of the Chico Police Department are in alignment. And that seems like a great place to begin this endeavor. The members of Concerned Citizens for Justice, we refer to ourselves as CC4J, came together after the shooting death of Desmond Phillips at the hands of Chico police officers on May 17th, 2017. Oh, what did I say? March 17th, I'm so sorry, I've known that deeply. And we came together with a sense, a shared sense that we must do something. This was not right, this death. Soon after we began to meet, in July, came the shooting death of Tyler Rushing. We also had been disturbed by previous excessive use of force incidents that did not become lethal, but were still disturbing, such as the highly publicized incident on August 30th, 2016, when a 19-year-old college woman was taken to the ground by a Chico police officer. This was an interaction that began over a blown-out license plate light. So we recognize and appreciate that Chico PD has made several changes in practice and training since those incidents. Plus, over the years, there have been many entirely respectful interactions between law enforcement and the police. Yet, we feel that tactics of intimidation are too often employed, and that it is essential for our community to adopt a process of independent, transparent citizen oversight to assure long-term change. We are in step with the times. In response to Black Lives Matter and publicity around the shooting deaths of Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, and so many, many others, citizen oversight groups are springing up all over the country, from Albany, New York, to Fort Collins, Colorado, to San Diego, California. And at the federal level, with the creation of the Task Force on 21st Century Policing. This is a movement, and we're part of it. We're right in time. Our intention for this evening is to introduce the concepts and vision of citizen oversight and building this, transforming this culture, introduce this to the greater community, and invite you to help us bring it about. We are aware that those charged with carrying out the tasks of law enforcement often face dangerous and challenging situations. Yet we are convinced that deep cultural changes will protect officers of the law as well as the communities they serve. We are not experts in this work, but we are learning as we go. During the first part of this evening, we will provide several brief presentations, including a couple of videos, to give you background on this effort to establish citizen oversight. Following that will be an opportunity to hear from all of you, to have the community conversation that we promised. Next up, we have Jill Bailey and Diane Suzuki to introduce the focus points that our group developed. identifying the priorities for our work. And that's on the sheet of paper that was handed out to you. We feel that this summarizes our priorities, although there's much more that we need to deal with than what are on there, but that's a really good start. Okay, thank you, Jill and Diane.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So thank you, Emily. We wanted to start out tonight by presenting to you our 6 focus points. It's been our work for the last year. We've done a lot of discussing and contemplating, but we kind of look back to these focus points as our 6 points of focus where we want to focus all of our efforts. And we believe that these changes that we're going to present have the potential to save many lives in our community. There is hard work ahead of us to change the culture of law enforcement. Our vision for our community starts with de-escalation becoming normal practice. The goal of policing in response to crisis situations should be de-escalation. This means officers take the time to evaluate and respond appropriately to an individual's erratic actions, whether these are due to health challenges, trauma, or any other reason. We expect law enforcement to make every effort to prevent injury, even in challenging situations. Giving our police the tools to do this requires ongoing education and training.
Training in behavioral health crisis intervention and avoidance of implicit bias is essential. Comprehensive training in behavioral health crisis de-escalation will allow police officers and other first responders, including 911 dispatchers, to respond appropriately to individuals in crisis. Such training should foster a culture of collaboration between the police, mental health professionals, social services, and/or family members, with the goal of a more peaceful resolution of each crisis. It's essential that 911 dispatchers send the appropriate resources to every call. And because bias against certain groups is inherent in our culture and influences even people who aren't aware of it, all first responders and law enforcement staff must receive comprehensive diversity, implicit bias training. Local police must ensure that incidents of disparate treatment are addressed so that all community members are treated with the same level of dignity and respect.
Expanding community-oriented policing. Community-oriented policing is a proactive approach to public safety in which police work closely with all sectors of our community. Collaboration is the foundation of community policing. Mutual, non-combative communication between police and all people living in our community will create relationships based on respect, in which police and citizens identify and solve community problems as partners.
Demilitarizing of local police. Police work depends on trust and respect. When police officers are armed like combat troops, they diminish relationships and intimidate citizens. Law enforcement may underestimate the impact of militarized images of themselves. Before the police accept military equipment from any agency, they must first receive authorization from local elected officials, such as the City Council or the Board of Supervisors. The matter must also be open to the public for comment. A less threatening image will help foster positive interactions between law enforcement and the community and will result in increased public safety. First and foremost, we would like our police officers to serve as guardians rather than warriors.
Support and care for our officers. Our police are essential. We know that police work can be both dangerous and stressful, and that first responders have higher levels of post-traumatic stress than the general public. Therefore, full mental health support must be available for officers and first responders whenever needed and encouraged following any crisis situation. Counseling must be mandatory following the discharge of a weapon or any use of force incident to ensure the mental health of the officer and the safety of the public. Law enforcement personnel involved in use of force incidents must live with the consequences of their actions. Thus, addressing such situations with adequate therapeutic intervention is imperative.
Citizen oversight of law enforcement. Improvement of our police department requires citizen oversight. An independent, impartial citizen board with the authority to review all police files is essential. As in other cities, this board will review every incident of police use of force. In addition, they will hear citizen complaints, recommend disciplinary action when necessary, and assess and recommend improvements to police policy. The board will operate transparently and issue its findings publicly. Its members will reflect the diversity of our community. Members of the board may be appointed by elected officials or elected directly by the voters.
So we believe that these changes will create a culture within the police department that values the dignity of all citizens and works to preserve human life. And those are our focus points. We have, at this point, 2 videos that we want to show. They're both about 10 minutes in length, and they kind of show what's happening around the country, some approaches to policing and de-escalation and mental health treatment that we thought were very helpful in understanding our concerns tonight. So I'm going to try and play those now.
With so many questionable police shootings caught on camera during the past 2 years, how police are trained is coming under greater scrutiny, along with calls for reform. Studies by the Washington Post and The Guardian found police in this country shot and killed about 1,000 people last year, almost 3 people a day. The Post found 987 cases, and The Guardian 1,014. The country's 18,000 police departments, on average, train officers for only a total of 15 weeks before rookies hit the streets. Maria Haberfeld, a professor of police science at the John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York, blames poor police training, not rogue cops, for many questionable cases of lethal force.
There are police officers who do not belong on the job, who are trigger happy, but this is not the overwhelming majority. To the contrary, this is a fraction of a fraction. But the overwhelming majority are poorly trained.
For police departments around the country, guidelines on the use of lethal force are based on Supreme Court rulings that justify it when officers feel that they or others are in imminent danger. But there are no national standards, and in the wake of so many notorious police shootings, some departments, like the one here in Columbus, are reinforcing the idea that deadly force should be a matter of last resort.
So he has a knife.
At the police academy here, veterans and rookies alike are studying videos of police-involved shootings.
What else could have been done? Could this life have been saved? How would you do it yourself? Is there a better way?
Police Chief Kim Jacobs, a 36-year veteran of the Columbus Police Department, became chief in 2012. After the 2014 Ferguson, Missouri police shooting of Michael Brown, who was unarmed, Jacobs ordered new lethal force training in Columbus. Community meetings had convinced her that a change was needed.
Why do people fear us? I mean, I heard that in our community meetings. People fear the police. That's absurd to me because we're the good people, and yet people are afraid of how we're going to react.
And that is understandable, Chief Jacobs says, when people see videos like this 2014 recording of a police dashboard camera in South Carolina. The incident began when State Trooper Sean Grubert pulled over driver LeVar Jones for not wearing a seatbelt. Grubert asked Jones for his driver's license.
Can I see your license, please?
When Jones reached inside his car, Grubert opened fire.
Did that seem like a threat to you?
I had no reason to think that there was a threat at that point in time. When I think about when I would justify myself pulling the trigger, I want to be certain that I am in imminent danger, and there's some way that that could happen.
Jones survived. Gruber was fired and charged with aggravated assault.
What could the cop do differently?
In Columbus, such videos are case studies in how not to handle potentially combustible moments. Chief Jacob says a rush to use of lethal force is a common mistake and one that contributed to one of Ohio's most infamous police shootings, the death of 12-year-old Tamir Rice in Cleveland in 2014. Rice had been holding a toy gun in a park when police responding to a 911 call drove within a few feet of Rice and seconds later opened fire.
What alternative did those officers have? What could they have done better?
Not gotten that close. They could either get out on foot and approach him and, giving him orders, let me see your hands, all that kind of thing. They could have tried to find out either via intercom or something else what this person's intentions were.
In Philadelphia, a spike in police shootings 3 years ago led then Police Commissioner Charles Ramsey, who retired earlier this month, to ask the U.S. Justice Department for help.
I wanted to take a look at our training. I wanted to look at our policy to make sure we're doing everything we can to minimize the number of times that an officer would actually have to resort to the use of deadly force.
Turn around slowly, keep those hands high.
The Justice Department offered more than 90 recommendations, including increased reality-based training, which emphasizes strategies that give police more time and distance from suspects in high-risk encounters.
All right. You have to call for backup right away.
Such tactics include calling for backup, finding cover or moving away from a dangerous suspect, engaging the suspect in conversation.
Slow the momentum. Remember that word? Slow it down.
Since adopting the recommendations, the Philadelphia Police Department's fatal shootings are down. In 2013, police shot and killed 11 people. That fell to 4 in 2014 and only 2 last year.
We have to train to make sure that our officers only use the force necessary under the most extreme circumstances, that being deadly force, period. Doesn't matter who the offender is.
But training in deadly force tactics is strictly up to individual police departments. Maria Haberfeld argues that needs to change.
To me, it's mandatory to identify minimal standards for each and every police department in the country with regard to use of force, and not just the length of training, but also the content. Because it's one thing to train police officers how to use a gun, but it's another to train police officers what kind of factors go into using deadly force.
Haberfeld and other criminologists say police departments also need to incorporate more training on race. In Columbus, black people make up 28% of the city's population, but only 12% of the police force. Sergeant James Fuqua says having more officers who reflect the neighborhoods they patrol could help reduce misperceptions and violent exchanges.
I'm not calling anybody a racist or it's racially motivated. I just think sometimes there's a misunderstanding with cultural differences.
Did you get hassled because you were a young black man?
Absolutely, absolutely. Just because of the color of my skin and the neighborhood in which I lived, many of times, I was, for lack of better words, harassed. When I got older, I realized that they weren't bad people and they were just doing their job. And then once I became an officer, I realized that, they were trying to do their job. But at the end of the day, they kind of did a poor job with the community policing aspect of it.
Former federal prosecutor Sharon Davies believes police training should also focus on unintended or implicit racial bias. Davis heads the Kerwin Institute on Race at Ohio State University and is a consultant to the Columbus Police.
If those associations are negative, such as presumptions of violence or threat or criminality, that can make a police officer see a threat where there is no threat.
What do you see as potential solutions? I mean, do we need changes in state law, or do we need much better police training?
There's absolutely no question that all police forces should be trained about the reality of unconscious racial biases that affect all of us. That's a reality that all of us need to take very seriously, and police officers especially.
Not even the most advanced training can eliminate lethal force, and police are legally justified to use it in order to save lives, including their own. In fact, the Washington Post study found that in 3/4 of the fatal shootings, police were under attack or defending someone who was. In Philadelphia and Columbus, police are convinced better training can give officers better options than shooting to kill.
You don't grow up being taught how to deal with the police. The police are taught how to deal with our citizens. And so it's our responsibility.
So we have one more video to show, and the next video focuses on the Memphis model. And I just want to remind everyone to write down questions or comments that you may have, because later on in the program we will have a guided conversation that we're hopeful that you have input for us.
Contributed to many Americans with mental illnesses ending up in jails. To address that, the city of Memphis pioneered police training techniques to help people with mental illness avoid getting arrested. One thing the Memphis police are taught is that the mentally ill are actually more likely to be victims of violent crimes than perpetrators. In tonight's signature segment, the NewsHour's Megan Thompson looks at a policing approach that's become a national model.
Police officer Christopher Ross patrols a precinct on the south side of Memphis, an area with a very high rate of crime. Ross sees a lot of violence, drug use, and prostitution.
783.
But those aren't the only types of calls that Ross responds to.
Mother's involved with her son, and he's diagnosed with ADHD and mood disorder. And she said he's been taking his meds, but right now he's been unruly. So we're gonna go and see what we can do to help.
Ross is part of the Memphis Police Department's Crisis Intervention Team, or CIT.
What's going on?
Officers specially trained to handle people with mental illness. Here, Ross finds a teenage boy in crisis. His mom says he's being bullied at school.
See, everybody at that school knows that you're smart, that you got something going for yourself, and what they're trying to do is to stop you from being all that you can be.
Ross is trained to de-escalate situations using mostly verbal techniques to keep both officers and citizens safe and keep people with mental health issues out of jail.
Matter of fact, I'm gonna give you my number. So when you're having a problem, call me, okay? If you feeling sad, you feeling depressed, call me. And you can tell me whatever you want to tell me. I don't care what it is. Handshake on it.
After 20 minutes, the teen is calm and agrees to go back inside. Memphis started its CIT program 27 years ago after the police shot and killed a man with mental illness who charged at them with a knife. The city formed a task force, including the Memphis Police Department and a National Alliance on Mental Illness. At the time, University of Memphis psychiatry professor Randy DuPont was directing the city's main psychiatric emergency service. He helped develop the CIT program.
In an event that's going to escalate and become a crisis, it's going to be those first few minutes that are pretty critical. So what they thought about when they came up with this concept was, why don't we take some of that expertise, let's identify those officers that want to do this, that could be good at it, give them the best training we can find, and then let's look and see what kind of differences that makes.
Hey, how you doing? You want to call?
That training starts with changing officers' attitudes and perceptions. DuPont says, people in crisis often act out of fear and may not understand what's happening around them. An untrained officer could interpret such behavior as defiance or non-compliance.
Officers are often trained in the academy to see non-compliance and respond with greater use of force. That's part of their training. But in CIT, what we're trying to say to the officers is, let's analyze the non-compliance, let's look strategically at it. So we're looking for that different interpretation of behavior.
First of all,
we have to talk about having compassion.
Major Vincent Beasley is in charge of the Memphis CIT program. He patrolled the streets as a CIT officer for 8 years. Are all officers cut out to do this kind of work?
I don't think so. I really think it takes a special person to do that. Not everybody's cut out for that, because you have to have patience, and you have to really care about people, and you have to understand that it's not the individual himself. It's something that's going on. It's something, you know, in his brain that's not working properly. It's a chemical imbalance.
CIT is having a measurable impact. Major Beasley says of the 14,000 911 calls last year that CIT officers responded to, only 19 encounters resulted in injuries to a person with mental illness, and the vast majority ended without a person being detained. Around 4,400 were taken to mental health treatment facilities, and just over 600 were taken to jail.
So we're not taking nearly as many people to penal facilities that are suffering from mental illnesses, because we realize they don't need to be there in most cases.
Those with mental illness who do get arrested wind up here at the Shelby County Jail, where there's a special wing with 46 cells for people with mental illness. Hundreds more inmates on psychiatric medication are housed in the jail's general population, where many are also offered psychiatric treatment and group therapy for things like addiction and anger management.
What else would y'all do when he throws up this, how are you going to help me?
Joining the police department's crisis intervention team is voluntary, and officers and dispatchers must attend 40 hours of training. There were 3 days of intensive role-playing based on real situations officers have faced in the field.
John, I see that you're very upset, and I want to help you.
Nobody cares about me. And with me out of job, man, it's never me to be here for.
I want to say from the standpoint, like you said, dealing with handled by CIT.
The trainees, dressed here in plain clothes, also spent a day meeting people with mental illness.
I'm at a point now where I can go back to independent living. I still must take my medication.
They learn about what it's like to live with their conditions and about their experiences with the police.
They came to my house, sheriff department came to my house and kicked my door in.
Well, he told me to shut my freaking mouth.
Could you have a paramedic make a scene over here?
Today, there are 274 active CIT officers like Chris Ross on the Memphis force of almost 2,100, or about 1 of every 8 officers. The CIT program is operated within the department's existing budgets. Officers wear these pins to identify themselves. Ross, who's been CIT for 3 years, never answers a call without backup. When he's flagged down by a man who says he's a Vietnam veteran and has bipolar disorder, Ross pulls over to talk. He uses simple strategies, introducing himself and being calm.
I'm Officer Ross. Just call me. You okay? Well, call me Chris, okay?
Ross says a huge part of his job is simply listening and keeping tabs on people he knows might need help.
And talk to me. That's what I'm here for. Man. Don't explode. You want to know why you ain't got to explode?
Yeah, because I'm talking to you.
Because you're talking to me. Let me see this.
Here, he checks up on a man he's gotten to know.
Third eye, you in here?
The man lives in an abandoned motel.
You sleep? Come and holler at me. I just want to talk to you, make sure you're doing all right.
I got all seeing eyes, man. I'm a Power Ranger and a superhero. You're really on my side. I'm on your side. So you understand it.
You always try to get them comfortable and let them know I'm here to help. And whatever they say, you listen to it, you repeat it to them so they'll know that you're listening to them. And eventually you'll establish a relationship and they'll feel more or less like you're there to help them versus trying to lock them up.
If Memphis police determine people might pose a danger to themselves or others, an officer can take them to the Crisis Assessment Center for evaluation and medication. Many of the services here are free. It's inside the Memphis Mental Health Institute, so if they need long-term inpatient care, patients don't have to go far. After they leave, there's also a new outpatient program for continuing psychiatric care. Officials say it's reduced the number of repeat visits to both the Crisis Center and the Institute. Mark Havener has been a patient at the Memphis Mental Health Institute. He has bipolar disorder and began having psychotic episodes 17 years ago, locking himself in a closet for hours at a time and attempting to kill himself.
Do you have any idea how many times you've tried to end your life?
Lost count at about 25.
25.
And I lost count at my hospitalizations. Again, I got tired of counting at 25.
During one psychotic episode in 2002, Havner started to strangle his wife.
I grabbed her by the throat, and I got up and I shoved her up against the inside of the front door of the house.
After he let her go, she called 911, and CIT officers responded.
By this time, I'm pretty much nonverbal. I can't express what's going on because it's a hurricane inside of me, a maelstrom. They don't even handcuff me because they see what kind of condition I'm in. Treating me as a human being in crisis and not a potential perpetrator.
Havner was hospitalized and never faced criminal charges. He got treatment, and today he is stable, has reconciled with his wife, and works as a counselor to others with mental illness. He's also become an advocate, sharing his story with the CIT trainees.
And that officer crouched down to my eye level, and he looked me in the eye. He recognized me as a person.
The strategies developed in Memphis are now called the Memphis Model and have been adopted by almost 3,000 of the nation's 18,000 law enforcement agencies. Studies have shown that CIT-trained officers are less likely to arrest people with mental illness than non-trained officers. For Chris Ross, that's one of the things he likes most about this job, the potential to help people, rather than put them in jail.
That's why I work, that's why I do it, to make a difference. Because if we get to the point where we're making a difference, we won't have to lock so many people up.
Turn on, see the...
Forgot to turn this back on. Oh, it's fast. So a lot of inspiration up here. And I saw lots of people writing down comments and questions, so I'm looking forward to that part of our program. We just wanted to provide an introduction to some of the alternatives to violence for our police department. Next, we have Margaret, who's going to look at what is citizen oversight.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe. And I'm going to need a little bit of light. I have about 10 minutes I want to share with you about citizen oversight. So, what do we mean when we say citizen oversight? Exactly what is citizen oversight of law enforcement? Based on the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, and their acronym is NACOL, in its simplest form, it is one or more individuals outside the sworn chain of command of a police department who hold that department and its officers accountable for their actions. Contrasted with internal affairs, which is within the police department and hidden from public view, citizen oversight lets citizens hold the police accountable for the use of force, police policies, and transparency. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Of course, all law enforcement is subject to the control and direction of citizens through our elected representatives. This is the essence of policing in a democratic society. How involved elected officials are in the operation of law enforcement varies region by region, of course. How involved are our elected officials in our police agencies? How do they respond to police use of force? Think of the many incidents you know about in our region and tell me how our elected officials responded. Who is holding our police accountable? Actually, we don't really know, do we? Oversight agencies become both an independent source for and a repository of both qualitative and quantitative data. They issue reports on the number, type, outcome of misconduct investigations, lawsuits, use of force, detention, and arrest. We don't have that data for Chico or Butte County at this point, but an oversight group would have it. Excuse me. One of the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement's primary goals is to provide help in establishing civilian oversight of law enforcement and to educate the public. It was established in 1995, and it is the largest civilian oversight organization in the United States. The first oversight in California was in Berkeley, established in 1973, the Police Review Commission, and they were granted the independent authority to investigate complaints. Attempts to establish oversight are sometimes hampered by police unions and or the indifference of our elected officials. The crime card, or selling fear to the community, is often what prevents support for oversight and blocks transparency. As we know, fear sells. But while some police unions oppose oversight, other police groups, such as Pamela Seifert, Sacramento Police Department, writing in the Police Chief magazine, says that professional civilian oversight of law enforcement agencies can transform organizational police culture in a very positive way. The police captain says that civilian oversight is exactly what is needed for the police to regain legitimacy, boost their morale, increase the hiring of diverse candidates, and improve our public safety. But, thank you, but policing, you know that clapping came from the people who have been working on this for a year with me. But policing is changing for many reasons, including the internet, smartphones, 24/7 news cycle, and the media culture that creates a narrative of its own. In the Department of Justice investigation into the Baltimore Police Department, it was revealed that the department was shielded almost entirely from public view, and that the inadequate oversight mechanisms damaged the department's legitimacy in the community. Yet, while we talk about police accountability, please don't forget that out of thousands, and actually out of most, daily police-citizen interactions, only a very few result in the use of force or injury. Professional civilian oversight can hold the media responsible for their exaggeration, and it can push back against the narrative that police violence occurs often. It doesn't, not in most towns, but if it does occur, it must be open to citizen scrutiny. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to police oversight. There are more than 200 oversight entities in the United States. No two are alike. There are civilian review boards, monitors, auditors, inspector generals, mediators, all seeking to resolve citizen complaints. The best approach is open to debate. Many factors will influence the best choice for our city and our county. But each civilian oversight board must be educated in police work, knowledgeable about equipment capabilities, police procedures, and the law. Because civilian oversight is such a huge issue, one of the tasks we must do is track legislation. We know of one bill that has the potential to really change how the police use force. It is Assembly Bill 931. It is currently in the Public Safety Committee, and it returns to the floor on June 19th, tomorrow. It is asking for a common sense standard, a common sense change in language that recognizes the value of preserving human life. It is a one-word change in the law. Police would be prohibited from using deadly force unless necessary. The law currently says that the police may use deadly force whenever reasonable. This is a profound and enormous change that will require police to use de-escalation techniques to defuse a situation. De-escalation is one of the top priorities of concerned citizens for justice. And SB 1421 is currently in the Assembly, and it seeks to make law enforcement records about officer use of force or sexual assault available to the public and to hiring agencies. Now, those records are completely hidden from public view. That must change. The public is not safe unless we have this information. Some of the words to describe oversight are Police Review Commission, Office of the Ombudsman, Police Review Authority, Police Review Board, Police Internal Investigations, Auditing Committee, Office of Citizen Complaints, and the list goes on and on. Some board members are trained mediators, some are attorneys, some are professionals in social sciences. Some oversight groups hear complaints, some limit the type of complaint to use of force incidents, some examine police policy, some have open hearings, some have subpoena powers. But what are the limitations of citizen oversight? It cannot ensure police accountability. Citizen oversight depends on the talent, the fairness, and personalities of the individuals involved. It has limited authority. It does not impose discipline on officers or dictate department policy, though it may make recommendations on policy and discipline depending on their charter. To create citizen oversight in Chico or Butte County will require that we study what oversight is best and needed in our region. We would need to define our goals for oversight to begin. The discussion must include collaboration with the public, the police, police labor, key public officials, grassroots community organizations, academia, all interested citizens. It will take a coalition of community members to make oversight a reality for us. It will take partnerships, police and civilian alike, to create citizen oversight and make it work for us. It will take ongoing collaboration to make it effective. Concerned Citizens for Justice believe that we have taken the first steps in this process. And should citizen oversight be established at the ballot box by a vote of all citizens or created in the city charter? We have choices. We will have to decide on what model to establish, what duties, power, and authority this group will exercise, and how will it be funded? Who will staff the oversight group? Volunteers or paid employees? How will we build relationships with key stakeholders, with law enforcement, with local government, with police unions, and with the public? particularly in this age of rancor and tribal politics. How will we do it? The effectiveness of oversight in any community is dependent on so many factors, including political will and budgetary support, ready access to information such as police files, records, performance data, police training. We do know that the most important thing we must do is listen to our community, be fully inclusive, and work together to develop the best oversight model for us. We are taking the first steps, and we need the next steps to be fully collaborative. We need to take the next steps with all of you. The movement for oversight is considered largely won, but now the challenges are developing it and spreading it throughout cities and counties. Standards for oversight and performance measures must be in place. Oversight is transforming the landscape of policing, and it is requiring closed, non-transparent police departments to realize that citizen-run oversight is beneficial to the police department and the community. Ultimately, it is protective for police, our community. Ultimately, it is protective for each of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. How y'all feeling? Check in. How y'all feeling? I know it's a little overwhelming. Don't let your emotions get involved. All right, so just all of that you've seen and heard here tonight, just remember that we're here to close the gap and build a bridge between the community and law enforcement and others that are involved in helping to make this happen. And so now is going to be this part of the event called a community conversation. So all those questions that you have written down, please be mindful of one another as they're asking their questions, and please remain respectful. As I stated earlier, a lot of you do not know me. Some of you do, but I will ask you to leave if I feel like you are getting out of hand or being disrespectful in any manner, because this is a community conversation, and we're trying to close that gap and build the bridge between us, the community, and our law enforcement. We're here to be the solution to the problem, not be the problem. All right?
Well, thanks, everybody. Thank you. Where'd she go? Margaret. Margaret, you're just so fantastic. You're great. Thank you, everybody from CC for J. You know what? You look back, we've been together probably over a year just putting all this together, and it seemed like he wasn't getting anywhere, and I sit here, I was just about to cry. I was like, wow, we really made a lot of headway. So we thank you guys for coming out, for being concerned citizens as well. And again, elected officials, those who are in authority, shout out to you guys. So now we're going to have our community conversation. So was this a good meeting or what? So far, so good? Well, let's just keep it good. This is community conversation time. So if you guys have any questions, comments, are we going to pass the other mic around as well? So this is that time to ask questions. We don't have all the answers. Again, we're grassroots, but we're building a coalition. We're building this oversight, the CC for J. So hopefully you guys in the audience will be a part of this to help build this and put it together. So who has any questions? You only have 2 minutes. So Keisha will take the mic. Okay, we had questions.
Get my exercise today.
Thank you. My name is Richard Munzer, and I am from, well, the homeless community. How you guys doing? Good. Chief, it sounds like we're taking a step backwards to good old-fashioned policing. The old-fashioned type that you stop, you talk, you find out what's going on. And that's what it really sounds like we need to do. We need to de-escalate and just take a step backwards. And having the privilege of growing up north, Washington, Oregon, California, one of these days we got to talk about newspapers. But anyway, they stopped in Lakeview. They stopped in Chewelah. They stopped in Yakima. And, you know, that's what it sounds like we're going to do. And I really hope we can get there. The next question I ask is, how do we get the mental health into the training academy? That's where it's going to count the most, when we get that education grassroots right down there. That's the question.
Would you like to respond first?
I can. Thank you very much. So there is mental health crisis training in the academy. That's really the beginning of all police officer training. But then, in addition, and just so you know, California officers are the best trained officers in this country. Most things that are developed, good things that are developed as far as training, usually come out of California. So it first starts in the academy, and then departments have required training for our field training officers, and then other departments will do additional things to add to that already required training. So every police department in California is under the mandate of the Peace Officer Standards and Training, and that's really the entity that establishes our training guidelines. And then each individual department in California then develops their own additional training core. So for us, we brought in an expert, Dr. Carol McKinley Alvarez. I could provide that information to the concerned Citizens for Justice. We have brought her in twice to train not just a select few of our police officers, but every one of our police officers, to include every one of our dispatchers, to include every one of our personnel that has any contact with the public. That includes records clerks, our community service officers. Everyone in the department has gone through that twice. She is outstanding. I will ask everyone to go ahead and Google her, and if you can find something on YouTube, she is outstanding. I know we also brought in members of the public to attend that training. Is anyone here that attended that training? Anyone, show of hands? She was outstanding. The other key piece, not only for training those officers with CAT and what have you, but we went again an additional step, just so you guys know. We sent a cadre of officers to train the trainer training regarding CIT, so they could come back and actually train the rest of the police department.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. All right, thank you.
Okay, well, I have one from this gentleman right here. State your name, sir.
Trey Robinson. Thanks to all who are involved with this effort. Will you all discuss what's next in regards to everything that you presented?
What's next? Everybody's looking at Emily. Well, what's next? What's next? You guys need to sign up. Yes, please.
Okay. Well, it's kind of an open book. This is the beginning of Chapter 2 of Concerned Citizens for Justice. And we don't have a plan other than hoping we don't have to lick our wounds after tonight. And it seems so far that we won't. And moving forward in whatever way it seems appropriate, one thing that occurs to me is that some of us need to sit down with the police, the Chico Police Union, and talk to the guys on the street, the folks on the street. But there's many places to go, and we'd like to hear from you because we don't want to do this by ourselves anymore.
Amen. Amen. Okay, anyway. Anybody else?
So my question is, I just finished the CIT Memphis model training in Woodland. I also speak at it for the past year and a half. They've trained 54,000 officers in Tehama, Placerville, Yolo, and just got 900 officer contract in Sacramento. And so I think this is a good starting point for this. I think that the mental health part is critical, and the services part out on the street of outreach is critical, because if we don't have that and we don't get to the core of the individuals, then we're not going to have anything. So I've been numerous times with great officers, awesome officers, and I've been stopped on the side of the street when 4 of them are surrounding someone and not so fabulous officers. So that's just like with anything. I mean, there are jerk people in my block and there are jerk people in your block, right? So we just have to all come together. So through NAMI, I'm also a board member of National Alliance Mental Illness Butte County and founder of Crisis Care Advocacy and Triage. And what we want to do is we want to bring the Memphis model to Butte County, and we want to train 50 advocates. But we want to train them with not a diversion from the police. We want them trained exactly as the police, because I am so tired of running into people and going like this, you know, batting heads, batting heads. We need to be in union, and our advocates out there, every one of us, there's a lot of us out there every single day, need to be on the same page with the police and what the officers are being trained as, so that way we can better understand what they're up against.
Thank you, Lisa.
Well said. I get one right here. What's your name, miss?
My name's Arnicio Kello. I've worked with teachers for many years at Chico State, and it took us quite a bit of time to train teachers how to deal with students. And I'm just wondering how much time is really spent with what the psychologists or whatever it was to work with these people. And we worked with those students over a full year. Some didn't make it, and some did, as I'm sure would happen with police. But I want to know how much real time is being spent.
Is that for Mr. O'Brien? I guess that's for you.
Thank you. So just, and this probably would be a good opportunity to maybe schedule something in the future where we really provide every aspect of your police department in a contextual format, so you understand more than just me talking for 2 minutes. I think that's really probably not ideal. I don't think it's fair to you. I don't think it's fair to the process, but I'll do my best to answer your question, ma'am. So a police officer attends about a 5-month, 6-month academy that has aspects of this throughout their training. And then after that academy training, the real training really begins, and that's what's called field training. And that's where that police officer, that police trainee, for essentially another 5 months, maybe longer, depending on their development, will have an experienced field training officer sitting next to them in a car every single minute for 5 months. Everything that police officer does is documented. Everything they do is documented. Every contact they have, every interaction they have, everything that they do in the course of that day is documented. So essentially they've got 10 months, 11 months, depending, to demonstrate to us that they are capable in becoming a Chico police officer. So that is an ongoing process.